Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ms. Meera Badre and your host for today's webinar. On behalf of the Western Naval Command, Indian Maritime Foundation, and the Nautical Institute India West, I take this opportunity to extend a warm welcome to our esteemed dignitaries, speakers, and attendees of the Maritime Webinar 2021, being held under the theme of Creating, Nurturing, and Harnessing India's Maritime Soft Power. For the past 7 years, the Western Naval Command, in conjunction with the Pune based Indian Maritime Foundation and the Nautical Institute India West, has been conducting seminars on subjects of common interest to the seafaring community, which have come to include greater and wider maritime disciplines like maritime safety, maritime history, maritime law, maritime consciousness. With widening scope, the initiative saw growing participation of maritime domain experts, practitioners, and gradually scholars and students. Last year, despite the pandemic and the virtual nature of the event, it attracted over 500 participants and generated a huge interest. Towards furthering this amalgamation of academic interactions and as a curtain raiser to the Indian Navy's upcoming Navy Week celebrations, this year's webinar will focus on maritime soft power in all its diversity. The webinar comprises 3 technical sessions and a special session apart from the inaugural and closing sessions. The viewers are requested to ask questions on the chat box and keep the comments coming. Towards the end of each session, the moderators are requested to collate the questions and direct the discussions thereon. As we have a fairly packed schedule, I would humbly request all participants to adhere to the allotted time. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to stress here that all the comments and opinions expressed in today's deliberations are those of the individual alone and do not reflect the official views of the organizations involved in conducting this event. I'm sure our audience would want to know more about the theme and the story behind it. And to know more about this topic, I request Commodore Kesnur to present the introductory remarks.
Thank you, Meera. Admiral Hari Kumar, the Flag Officer commanding Western Naval Command. Captain Anand Dikshit, Master Mariner, President of Indian Maritime Foundation. Captain Kapil Dev Behel, Master Mariner, Chairman, Nautical Institute West. Captain Rajan Veer, President Emeritus, Indian Maritime Foundation. Distinguished flag officers, eminent moderators and panelists, ladies, gentlemen, participants, good morning to you all. Now, my co-host Meera has very succinctly explained the rationale behind this year's theme and what we have been doing previous years and how it has taken a step up this year. It remains for me to fill in a bit more flesh and blood into that and give you perspective in what way do we see the seminar unfolding. Ladies and gentlemen, a few weeks ago, we had an interesting article in the Times of India by author and columnist Swapan Dasgupta, wherein he mentioned in passing that while countries such as UK and France, while possibly somewhat diminished in their global power, at least compared to World War II status, have not necessarily reduced their stature in global influence. And the reason he brought out is because of many of their institutions and entities. And he mentioned in particular universities, think tanks, museums and display spaces, and a whole lot of corresponding what we might call as soft power elements, music, literature, architecture, which acts like a magnet to the global community. Now, this in a way encapsulates what we were thinking of this time too, because in our deliberations last year on enhancing maritime consciousness, one of the things that came out very sharply in focus is that the way to go about doing it is to develop greater institutions and entities that do this enhancing maritime consciousness in a very institutionalized way. Last year, also, the outcome was that we need to have a global presence in many of our maritime so-called soft power issues, and how do we go about doing it. So that leads us naturally to this year's discussion. Now, between last year and this, ladies and gentlemen, certain very encouraging things have happened on the maritime soft power perspective. It must be understood here that while maritime hard power elements may not have reached their complete potential or status that we want, there is a recognition of what they constitute and how we go about it. On the other hand, the soft power is a bit more inchoate, somewhat unclear, and can lead to multiplicity of opinions. However, notwithstanding that, as I said, there have been encouraging sort of developments since the last year. And if I can recollect some of them just in passing or in random, we have had since last year the opening of Center for Excellence in Maritime Studies, a Mumbai University initiative, and we have the director from there as a part of our first session on maritime pedagogy with other similar institutions like IMU and GMU, which have already established a base. Then we've had encouraging developments on the museum front. The National Maritime Heritage Complex, a huge complex over almost 400 acres, is coming up in Lothar, one of our biggest maritime complexes when it happens. And that's a very ambitious project. We got someone from there speaking to us. Mumbai Maritime Museum Society is making rapid strides. Just later today, the Heritage Hall of the Naval Dockyard is being renovated. There are lots of such maritime spaces that are coming up in a big way. The Indian Navy itself, interestingly, in this year, through mechanisms such as NMF and MHS, which are in the forefront, through agencies like the Hydrography branch, has been doing much. And over the last year, if we have seen the Indian Navy's soft power initiatives, be it a wonderful show during the Cyclone Tote, when we mounted the biggest search and rescue operations, our show during the COVID Wave 1 and Wave 2, Samudra Setu and Mission Sagar, or things as simple or as recent as the Goa Maritime Conclave, when we brought several heads of countries together, heads of navies together to discuss issues of common interest in the maritime realm. All of these point to certain encouraging tendencies wherein, and I'm just bringing out a few in the vast maritime firmament, point to certain encouraging tendencies on the maritime soft power front. It remains for us to take this forward, and I hope that the discussions and deliberations that we have will indeed do that. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite you, take part in the seminar, send your questions and comments very actively, and wish you a very, very nice day, full of cogitation, full of interesting deliberations. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again.
Thank you, Commodore Kesnoor. It sure sounds like the whole idea of this webinar and the sessions thereon grew pretty organically. To begin with the day's proceedings, let me introduce Captain Anand Dikshit, President, Indian Maritime Foundation, who has kindly consented to deliver the opening address. Captain Dikshit is an alumnus of the training ship Dufferin and a master mariner. He has had vast experience at sea, spanning over 4 decades, which includes command of 32 years on board bulk and gas carriers, oil tankers, including very large crude carriers. Presently, he's a guest lecturer at Savitribai Phule, that's Pune University, at the Department of Defense and Strategic Studies, and the President, Indian Maritime Foundation. Captain Dikshit, may I invite you to deliver the opening address?
Thank you, Meera. Admiral Hari Kumar, officers of the Indian Navy and the Merchant Navy, members of the Nautical Institute and Indian Maritime Foundation, fellow mariners and non-mariners, ladies and gentlemen. Very good morning to you. It gives me great pleasure in welcoming you to the joint webinar organized by Western Naval Command, Indian Maritime Foundation, and the Nautical Institute. This is the 8th edition of the joint seminar series. The aim of these seminars has been to bring the seafaring communities, the Navy, the Coast Guard, and the Merchant Marine together so that we could understand each other's roles, capabilities, and adopt the best practices of each service. The central theme of the joint seminars has been fostering cooperation between the seafaring communities. 9 years ago, the Western Naval Command launched this initiative at the behest of the then IMF President, Commodore Rajan Veer, with the support and participation of the Nautical Institute, India West. We're thankful to the WNC and NI India West for their efforts in organizing today's webinar and hope that this cooperation will continue. Over the years, we have covered a number of topics and subtopics of interest to seafaring communities. The fact that we are now into the 8th edition of this recurring event is a proof in itself of the relevance and value of this symposium. Until now, this forum has been confined to a small section of maritime professionals exchanging views and information among themselves. But now it is felt that we need to move on and do something more while still maintaining our core objectives. The organizers have taken a step in the right direction by expanding the scope of this seminar to make it more inclusive and cover a wider range of topics of maritime interest. Today, besides the main theme, we will be looking at different aspects of the maritime realm like maritime history, physiology, maritime archaeology, maritime education from academicians' point of view, and the much neglected aspect of maritime culture, the marine art. If I may add a word here, IMF has set up a separate organization called SEMA, Society of Indian Marine Artists, to promote marine art in India with the objective of creating maritime consciousness among the people of India. There is also a separate wing called Junior SEMA for the younger age group below 16. You will hear more about SEMA and Junior SEMA in session 3. Our main theme today is creating, nurturing, and harnessing India's maritime soft power. We have a number of eminent speakers today who will be sharing their knowledge and expertise with us. So I shall restrict my opening remarks to the broad outline of the theme. Soft power is a relatively new term in the maritime lexicon. The term hard power is easier to understand because obviously it means the country's fighting navy, the ships, the aircraft, and the weaponry. And of course, the ability and the will of the country to project that power beyond its own waters. Soft power, on the other hand, is more difficult to define, and each country will have its own interpretation of the term, depending on their geopolitical situation and their security needs. In peacetime, when the use of hard maritime power to promote national interests is not appropriate or desirable, the soft power assumes greater significance. In the case of China, the component pieces of China's maritime power are its navy, the Coast Guard, maritime militia, merchant marine, shipbuilding, and fishing industry. All these backed by China's smiling face diplomacy. It is easy to see the hard and soft components in China's maritime power. But all countries may not possess the wherewithal for building such a vast maritime force and may not even consider it necessary. As for India, our geostrategic location and our unique security requirements dictate what we must do. First of all, development of our ports and the necessary infrastructure, enhancing shipbuilding and ship repairing facilities, and most important, increasing our merchant shipping tonnage consistent with our trade volume. These are the bare minimum requirements in our pursuit to become a maritime power. Because of our unique geographical location, our area of interest extends far beyond our own shores. We have to assert our presence in the Indian Ocean region, but without seeming to be aggressive, especially in the littoral states and island territories. As we all know, over the years, the term IOR has been gradually replaced by the new term Indo-Pacific region, and accordingly, our national policy has also undergone a shift and has become Act West and Look East policy. What do we need to do to become a maritime soft power in our neighborhood? Humanitarian assistance, disaster relief operations, financial aid to the extent we can afford, and maintaining peace in the region would be some of the things that could be done and in fact are being done. The Navy has done a commendable job in generating goodwill in the nearby countries through its diplomatic and benign roles. So I think we have already made a good start. But it is important to remember that this is not a purely naval business. We must simultaneously act on many other fronts: diplomatic initiatives, enhancing cultural ties, trade and commerce, developing tourism, and most importantly, people to people contact. All these are necessary to nurture and harness our maritime soft power. I'm sure our eminent speakers today will give you a better insight into this subject. May I take this opportunity to congratulate Admiral Hari Kumar on his elevation to CNS and wish him well in his new role. With that, I conclude my opening address. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Dikshit, for the very passionate opening remarks. May I now introduce Captain Kapil Dev Behl, President, Nautical Institute India West, who has kindly consented to deliver the inaugural address. Captain Behl is an alumnus of training ship Dufferin and a master mariner who has been on board various ships, including 5 years in command. He has a rich experience of about 25 years as a nautical cargo and warranty surveyor for reputed firms, specializing in maritime emergency response, risk assessment and claims, as well as an oil major wetting inspector. He's a maritime arbitrator who has served as a court warden, member of the governing council at Narottam Morarji Institute of Shipping, and is currently the chairman of the Nautical Institute India West. Captain Behl, may I request you to deliver the inaugural address?
Thank you so much. Vice Admiral Hari Kumar, PVSM, AVSM, VSM, ADC, Flag Officer Commanding-in-Chief, Western Naval Command, Vice Admiral Pradeep Chauhan, retired, AVSM, VSM, Director General, National Maritime Foundation, Captain Dikshit, President, IMF, dignitaries, officers of the Indian Navy, Indian Coast Guard, members of the IMF and Nautical Institute, fellow mariners, and participants. When one thinks of international affairs, what comes to mind is power. We're all familiar with hard power, which is the ability of a nation to coerce another. But with increasing proliferation, one needs to appreciate the immense potential of soft power, which is the ability of a nation to co-opt through appeal and attraction rather than coercion. Joseph Nye, who coined the term soft power in international affairs, aptly described it as a means of getting others to want the outcomes that we want, predicated on the attractiveness of one's culture, political values, and foreign policy. India has tremendous potential to develop her soft power, but the phenomena has not been well studied and fully appreciated. There are numerous modes of exercising such influence. Culture, which is spread overseas by philosophers, traders, and migration, but not through conquest. National values, including our strong democratic foundation, secularism, tolerance, and pluralism. The practice of yoga, which has enabled India to spread her vast ancient knowledge systems, and of course, the more recent development of medical tourism. Visual and performing arts, including music and cinema, the evacuation of civilians from war zones, humanitarian assistance in times of natural calamities or disasters, assistance to merchant vessels operating in piracy-infected areas. These are just some of the points that come to mind. Whereas military solutions which utilize capabilities are complex, the outcomes are easier to quantify and monitor. Defensive soft power projections, on the other hand, with greater emphasis on capacities, can be used for image building and as an instrument to exert influence. However, success or otherwise of soft power is more difficult to quantify and monitor. Alliance Française and Max Muller Bhavan are fine examples of nations leveraging their soft power through language. India does not have an active policy to spread our language, although Prakrit and Sanskrit are identified as a source among the Proto-Indo-European group of languages. Similarly, India does not actively project its political model as an attraction for others. It is important to distinguish all the above aspects from propaganda, because once credibility is eroded, the other aspects of soft power can lose their attractiveness. But today I wish to stress the potential of the maritime industry in particular, which as the most economic, cost-effective, and environment-friendly means of transportation is synonymous with globalization and is thus an ideal means of soft power projection for India. Other than the huge opportunities which exist in the mainstream shipping sector of ship owning, ship management, and shipbuilding, etc., it is in the services sector that India holds the key to enhancing her soft power. Our ship manning and management companies are a success story in this regard, and the thousands of Indian seafarers are soft power ambassadors. But soft power isn't proportionate to the number of ships or the volume of maritime trade. This is readily apparent when one compares the soft power projections of nations with huge trading volumes compared with others which lead the world in soft power influence. Imagine the influence on the impressionable mind of a young officer studying an admiralty chart, referring to a Brown's Almanac, or reading sailing directions. No wonder the United Kingdom still maintains primacy in the maritime industry. I wish to particularly draw the attention of participants on the importance of maritime services sectors, which include marine insurance, protection and indemnity insurance, port terminal, oil pollution, warehouse liability insurance, etc. Brokerage and other maritime service industries, and then financial and banking services, admiralty laws, arbitration and litigation. All these are fine examples which we can develop. I would particularly urge mariners to write and publish authoritative works which can be established as reference manuals throughout the world. Each of these elements support and promote each other, and India would do well to concentrate on these aspects as a means to enhance a soft power. I am presently writing a book titled Archiving the Memories of Ex-Dufferin Cadets, Lest We Forget. The intention is to collate one memoir of each batch starting from 1927 all the way to 1973. In the case of ex-cadets who are no longer with us, I am reaching out to their family. I never cease to be amazed at the enormous goodwill prevailing among mariners settled far and wide with just one thing in common: pre-sea training. Each one has a story to tell, each is indebted, and each considers these formative years as having shaped their future careers. A wonderful fine projection of Indian soft power. This then is the legacy which future maritime training institutes have to sustain. No wonder the very first after this opening session has been aptly allocated to maritime education. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Captain Behan. That was such a succinct, wonderful presentation by you, where you touched all the key points required as far as maritime soft power is concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my proud privilege to introduce our keynote speaker, Vice Admiral Hari Kumar, Flag Officer Commanding in Chief, Western Naval Command. Ladies and gentlemen, Vice Admiral Hari Kumar, in his 40 years nearly of naval career, has had a very illustrious and distinguished portfolio of several assignments, appointments, and accomplishments. Admiral Hari Kumar is an ex-NDA commissioned on 1st January 1983. He has the distinction of being amongst the rare officers who's commanded a ship in every rank, beginning from a Coast Guard vessel as a lieutenant on to missile corvettes, missile destroyer, and finally our aircraft carrier Virat. This culminated in the prestigious appointment in the rank of Rear Admiral as the Flag Officer Commanding Western Fleet, the sword arm of the Indian Navy. Now, his other operational assignments include the Fleet Gunnery Officer of Western Fleet and the Fleet Operations Officer of the Western Fleet. He's had enormous international exposure. He was one of our initial Blue Beret warriors as the part of military observer team in Somalia in the early 90s. He's attended the Staff College at US in the second half of the 90s. Then he was the naval advisor to the government of Seychelles in the first decade of the noughties, and culminated that later in that decade with a course at the prestigious Royal College of Defence Studies. Now, ladies and gentlemen, on the training vertical too, Admiral Hari Kumar has rich experience. He was divisional officer in the Indian Naval Academy. Thereafter, he has been the training commander at INS Dronacharya, our gunnery school. A few years later, as a Rear Admiral, he was the first commandant of the Naval War College, where several pioneering initiatives in professional military educations were undertaken. And then he was the Flag Officer Sea Training after that. In the field of personnel and HR management, the Admiral has tenanted appointments as the Controller of our Personnel Services and the Chief of our Personnel, effectively the head of HR and personnel in the Indian Navy. As the flag officer, he was, before coming to this present appointment, the Vice Chief of Defence Forces, where he set into motion several initiatives towards jointmanship. Ladies and gentlemen, the Admiral is a keen sportsman. He loves his long walks. He is an excellent swimmer and a badminton player. He also has a rich portfolio of several degrees from MA King's College London to MPhil to PG Diploma in Shipping Management from Narottam Morarji Institute. He is also pursuing his PhD. Ladies and gentlemen, this is just the skeletal framework. One of the things that is not said in his CV is that he is a patron and very much encouraging of studies, knowledge, and he constantly pushes people into doing cutting edge research and knowledge work. He constantly is exhorting people to read and to pursue knowledge for the sake of knowledge. It also gives me great pleasure in informing you all that Admiral Hari Kumar has been chosen by the Government of India to be the Chief of Naval Staff, and he will be taking over as the CNS at the end of this month. I'm sure you'll all agree that this is a very rich and illustrious CV, and we can't wait to hear it. Admiral Hari Kumar, sir, over to you for the keynote address.
Thank you, Keshnur. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Western Naval Command, let me welcome Captain Anand Dikshit, who is the President of the Indian Maritime Foundation, Captain Kabildev Bahl, who is the Chairman of the Nautical Institute India West, the Flag Officer, Commanding Officers, Officer in Charges of the Navy and the Coast Guard who are present, Senior Officers, Master and Trainee Officers of the Merchant Navy, scholars, academia, members of the media, all distinguished panelists and delegates for the 8th edition of the Maritime webinar being jointly conducted by the Indian Navy, the Indian Maritime Foundation and the Nautical Institute to foster cooperation among seafaring communities. My special greetings also to Commodore Rajan Veer, who is the President Emeritus of the IMF, the moving force not just behind these webinars, but in the broader realm of the maritime awakening in the country through various initiatives, including the IMF. The objective of the webinar is to get all maritime historians, scholars, practitioners under one roof to discuss issues of mutual interest and gain from each other's knowledge and experience. It's a step in the right direction for awakening maritime consciousness of our nation, which had a great part as a seagoing power, which had a great past as a seagoing power, and may surely secure a bright future with our collective efforts. As seen from previous editions, with the passing years, both the quality of papers and participation has grown substantially. I am hopeful of a similar outcome for this seminar as well. So let me begin by acknowledging the stellar role the Indian Maritime Foundation and the Nautical Institute have played in enhancing maritime awareness in our country. In my view, the Navy and the Coast Guard are also doing all they can to further our joint cause along with various associated government and non-government agencies. Figuratively speaking, the evolution of life and its sustenance on Earth is dependent on the oceans. It's all the more important with the ever-growing population and the availability of arable land getting scarce. As such, Mark Twain said clairvoyantly in early 20th century, by land, they aren't making it anymore. Of course, some amount of reclamation is going on in various places by some countries. Excluding that, there really is not any more land being made available. Yet, as the vital supplies and resources dry up on land, we'll have to go back to the sea to seek resources, be it oil, gas, fish, nutrients, proteins, minerals, etc., with much greater thrust. The Indian Ocean region is endowed with a wealth of natural resources which are as yet largely untapped, abundant with resources particularly in sectors like fisheries, aquaculture, ocean energy, seabed mining and minerals. Incidentally, there is a saying that in the Indian Ocean region, the fish die of old age because of very limited pursuit of industrial fishing. There is a tremendous economic opportunity, therefore, to develop maritime tourism and shipping. We are all aware that about 95% of our trade by volume and 70% by value is transported over the sea. And transportation by sea is going to remain as the most efficient form for a long time to come. It is claimed that with roughly the same amount of energy, we can move about 250 kgs over land on wheels, about 2,500 kgs on rails, and about 25,000 kgs by sea. I mean, that is the type of exponential ability that we can generate when we translate the movement of goods by sea. As the concept of blue economy gains traction, we see more and more maritime related projects underway. The release of Maritime India Vision 2030 in March this year by our Honorable Prime Minister is a significant step in this direction. This involves an investment of over 3 lakh crores. It generates more than 20 lakh jobs, and it unlocks annual revenue potential for major ports worth about 20,000 crores by revamping the port infrastructure in our country. At the same time, terms like seasteading, just like we used to have homesteading, is also gaining prominence. Floating cities and cities that sit on the ocean floor are being planned off Tahiti. There is an underwater spiral city which is being worked upon or planned near Tokyo, which can accommodate up to 5,000 people at a depth of nearly 16,000 feet. In an article from the Center for International Maritime Security, I came across this interesting rule. That is 66, 70, 80, 90, 99 rule, which expands to say that 66% of the global wealth comes from in or near the seas. 70% of the globe is oceanic, just as the human body has water. 80% of the population is coastal. 90% of the goods arrive by sea, and 99% of the international digital data goes by submarine cable. Therefore, there is much focus on the centrality of the oceans in our economic prosperity. The development of the blue economy holds much promise for the IOR. Indian Ocean is the world's preeminent seaway for trade and commerce. It is said that Indian Ocean was the ocean which saw first travel as early as 5,000 years back. In fact, it is said that the Pacific Ocean saw people traveling on it only about 2,000 years back, and the Atlantic Ocean was used for travel as late as 1,000 years back only. So while there is accelerated growth in India to develop our maritime infrastructure and capabilities, including investment in the hard power in terms of shipbuilding, port infrastructure development, the domain of maritime soft power remains a question mark. So before we examine the why and the how come part of this statement, let us understand what is soft power and specifically the maritime soft power and why we need it. You're all aware that this term was articulated by Joseph Nye in his book on soft power. And broadly speaking, it can be termed as our nation's capacity to favorably influence affairs and policies internationally without the use of coercive power, like the use of force, financial muscle, or diplomatic compelling. It's a positive perception which is to be created in the minds of global audiences through a wide spectrum of constituents like socio-cultural, economic, civilization aspects, etc. Through public outreach by the use of media, inclusive of art, literature, movies, the maritime education across a range of disciplines, books, publications, official dialogues, and strategic communication. So if we apply the prism of maritime power to it, it may mean leveraging our rich maritime history, deep cultural roots, or maritime presence around the globe, the various HADR activities, various cooperation that we have with the countries in our neighborhood, along with our growing economic power to favorably shape the opinion of the world for furthering common interests. Now, coming to the second part as to why are we lacking in it? While India inherited a rich maritime legacy which can be traced back to the 3rd millennium BC, we had the world's first tidal dock built around 2300 BC during the Harappan civilization near the present-day Mangrol Harbour along the Gujarat coast. There is ample evidence of our trade with various countries of Southeast Asia, including Java, Sumatra, as well as with East Africa, West Africa, and the Mediterranean region. So India's maritime prowess over this period of time reflected its standing in terms of wealth, knowledge, culture, and general prosperity of the people on the land. This was the golden era of the maritime history of India, and as a result, the traces of Indian tradition and culture can be observed being followed in these distant lands even today. This is actually soft power making its presence felt. But then, as we turned our gaze landward in the 2nd millennia, we started a slow winding down of our maritime soft power. The neglect over centuries not only left us vulnerable to attacks from invaders, but was also instrumental in eroding our deep-rooted maritime history, traditions, and legacy, finally translating into a continental-centric mindset. It is said that King Akbar, who had ruled India, had seen the sea only once in his lifetime when he came to the Gulf of Khambat. So sea blindness was rampant. I'd like to bring out what Rudyard Kipling had to say. He said that nations have passed away and left no trace, and history gives the naked cause of it. One single simple reason in all cases: they fell because their peoples were not fit. So though slowly and steadily efforts are being put in to develop the maritime infrastructure, we still lack the level of maritime awareness and consciousness which is desirable for a maritime nation. If you are to evolve as a maritime nation, we would need to harness the potential of our country to invest its resources in manpower, building of trade, building of merchant vessels, suitable policies, maritime training facilities, as well as various agencies to progress research and development. We would need an entire maritime ecosystem which synergizes growth in all its integral components, as well as motivates its best brains to resolve challenges being faced by contemporary mariners. So what are some of the challenges in recent years? Factors such as the rise of countries like China, India, other Asian economies, and their increasing economic demands is manifesting in greater trade, and this has meant that the hub of global economic activity has actually shifted from the Atlantic to the Indo-Pacific. It has on the one hand given rise to increased rivalry for limited resources, while also having serious geopolitical and strategic consequences. Not all differences can be resolved by application of force or by signing of treaties, as mostly these differences lie in the grey zone, and hence often we need either goodwill or the fear of reprisal to safeguard our interests. Often it is the trade and commerce which takes the first hit. The current crisis of container shortage and exorbitant freight charges is a stark reminder of what can go wrong. Therefore, to tackle the challenges, we may need to leverage smart power as well, which involves effective use of diplomacy, persuasion, force projection, economic might, as well as soft power. The accretion of offensive power comprising the Navy and the Coast Guard can be accelerated by acquiring newer and more capable ships. And its civilian components also, such as the Marine Police, Merchant Marine, Fisheries, etc., can also be augmented. But building soft power is a long-drawn process because it has to be done in the mind at the perception level. So while building maritime infrastructure like ports, warehouses, shipbuilding, etc., we need to inculcate the maritime orientation and maritime consciousness in our society. Simple things like it is stated that the average Indian consumes only 3 kgs of fish a year, while the average Japanese consumes 40 kgs a year. There is a paradox we face. Even as we turn to the sea for resources, the human contact or the human experience with the sea is dwindling even faster. In the past, the sea was much more central in our minds because that was the only means of long distance travel. It connected people, and that was the only way for goods to travel far distances. It even inspired great literature. If you're aware of the works of people like Joseph Conrad. So for the past 5 millennia, the sea was very important for the humans. But today, very few people travel by sea, while maximum goods travel by sea, some part of it travels by air, and life at sea is not all that attractive. I've just bring out what the Admiral A.T. Mahan, Alfred Thayer Mahan, had to say. He said he was a seasick guy, and he himself said that what a beastly thing a ship is, and what a fool a man is who frequents one. Similarly, when Britannia ruled the waves in 1773, Dr. Samuel Johnson had this to say about life at sea. Mind you, this was at the time, it was on the cusp of the Trafalgar victory, where the Royal Navy was at its zenith. He said that about life at sea, that, I quote, "No man will be a sailor who has contrivance enough to get himself into a jail. For being in a ship is like being in jail with the added chance of being drowned. A man in jail has more room, better food, and commonly better company." This, of course, much has changed. Today, life on board is much better. The conditions, the technology, all that is much improved. However, today's tankers and containers have very little crew, which further reduces the human experience of going out to sea and working at sea. So, therefore, many of us may feel removed from the practical significance of the sea, apart from seeing it as a medium for recreational purpose. So, this is also further likely to increase as we move on to unmanned ships, unmanned cargo ships, unmanned warships, unmanned aircraft, and so on, which will operate at sea. So, just to highlight you, in the 14th century, the manning used to be 1 man per ton of capacity. But by 1600, already the ratio was about 1 man for 4 tons of capacity. Today, the VLCCs and the very large container ships have barely a crew of 20 to 30 only. So, our country, as stated earlier, has enormous maritime potential. and to convert this potential to power, we all have to contribute towards this endeavor and make the whole greater than the sum of its parts. Just to illustrate, I just want to say that when you look at a piece of paper like this, and it's approximately 1 mm thick. Now, if you fold it over 50 times, like this 50 times, how much do you think the thickness will be? The human beings, as human beings, we normally look at arithmetic progression, but actually, if you fold a paper like this 50 times, it will achieve a thickness of 80 million miles, which is the distance from the sun, from the earth to the sun. So therefore, what I want to point out is that the human mind is used to arithmetic progression. But while today we are living in an age of exponential growth, the tide of exponential technology, where performance is rising exponentially and the costs are falling exponentially, will make, therefore, many things previously considered impossible possible in many ways and entirely unbelievable ways and in unimagined timelines. This I had come across in a book called From Leapfrogging to Pole Vaulting by Mr. Raghunath Mashelkar. He says that the leapfrogging is a response to an external stimuli, and when you talk of a growth, a 10% increase in performance is called incremental innovation. A 100% increase in performance is called leapfrogging, while a 1000% or a 10x increase in performance is considered as transformational innovation. So my point here is that we have to think as to how can we harness technology to exponentially increase the maritime consciousness in a country. Just to illustrate, in 1764, when the spindle was invented, it took 119 years for it to reach 50 million subscribers. Coming to 1895, the radio was invented. It took 38 years for it to reach 50 million users. 1927, the TV took 13 years to reach 50 million users. 1991, the internet took 4 years. 2004, the Facebook took 3.5 years. And 2016, Reliance Jio took just 83 days to reach 50 million users. So my point here is that we should look at how can we harness technology to bring in maritime consciousness in our country in a much faster and quicker pace. We mariners also see it as an effort to overcome sea blindness through various studies and publications. We need to encourage that, and more people have to do research, studies, publish papers, publish books, and that is the best. And we need to convince our people using the power of social proof. Let me quote an anecdote in this regard. There was an oil man, an oil prospector, who was met by St. Peter at the gates of heaven with the bad news that there is no room for him there, although he was highly qualified for it. So he sought permission from St. Peter to speak a few words to the present occupants. As it seemed a harmless request, St. Peter agreed. So the oil prospector shouted out, "Oil discovered in hell." So soon the gates opened and all oil prospectors who were inside came out and started moving towards hell. St. Peter was very much impressed, and he invited the oil prospector to move in and make himself comfortable. The prospector then paused for a minute and then he said, "No, I think I'll go along with the rest of the boys. There might be some truth to the rumor after all. So, what I want to say is that this is the power of social proof, and we need to use it to advantage to try and generate maritime consciousness. As you have learned this from our past, that it has to be through maritime cooperation between various seafaring communities and countries. It must also be based on mutual trust, cooperation, dialogue, and respect for each other. The young seafarers in the audience today are the policymakers of tomorrow. You may be faced with the responsibility of solving these challenges in due course. I am confident that over the course of the webinar today, as also during informal interactions, the participants will hold comprehensive deliberations on all issues maritime, evaluate and analyze various challenges being faced by the maritime community, and come up with viable options that can guide policy formulation for creating, nurturing, and harnessing India's soft power in the maritime domain. With these words, I would like to sign off, and I wish the seminar grand success. Thank you for your time and patience. Jai Hind, Samno Varun.
Thank you, Admiral Hari Kumar, for the very powerful and thought-provoking inaugural address that touched on the wide spectrum of maritime soft power. May I now request Flag Officer Commanding-in-Chief, Western Naval Command, Vice Admiral R. Hari Kumar, and Chairman IMF, Captain Anand Dikshit, to release the proceedings of the 7th edition of Maritime Webinar organized last year. With Captain Behel in Dubai, he is unfortunately not in possession of the book, but we are sure he wishes us well from Dubai. Keeping in mind the gaining traction of the Indo-Pacific region, this book is timed perfectly. I extend my gratitude to all the dignitaries with us here, Vice Admiral R. Hari Kumar, Captain Dikshit, Captain Behel. Thank you very much.